Our last speaker, before we go into the workshops, is Michaela Jones. And Michaela has spent the majority of her life working in the third sector, where she extensively promoted volunteering as a two-way process of professional and personal development. Is that right?
It is indeed.
Yeah, good. However, alcohol dependency intervened, leading to a loss of a career, home, and financial problems. Michaela's been in recovery since June 2008. Michaela is interested in all aspects of the recovery movement, but gravitates particularly towards the power of virtual recovery communities to connect individuals who are isolated and to enable them to engage with each other. Michaela became the content editor for Wired into Recovery in late 2009. I'm delighted to present Michaela to you.
Ooh, cool. Ni hao. That's Chinese for hello. That's just to prove I did live in China for 3 years. I can also swear at taxi drivers in 3 different dialects, but we'll leave that one for today. As David said, I'm from Wired into Recovery, but perhaps more importantly, I'm a recovering alcoholic, and it'll be 3.5 years on December the 16th. I say most importantly because I see one of the key roles of recovery champions is putting a face and voice on recovery. And I don't mean to say that's just people who've had an addiction past. Anybody can be a recovery champion. If you're a professional working in the recovery field, if you're an ally of recovery, if you're a family member of somebody who's had an addiction issue. The key thing is getting your experience out there, showing that we do recover and you work every day with people who do recover. What unites us all is the value of lived experience, and I think that's something we all have to offer. But now I'm going to ask you a question. Who has a secret that they feel embarrassed, ashamed, or guilty about? If you do, put up your hand. Or if you're like me and have millions, put up both hands. That's what I like to see. I'm amongst the right people. Okay. Now, who wants to come up here, stand next to me, and tell everybody all about it? Anyone? No? Okay. How about then I just put you into small groups, stay on the tables, preferably you don't know each other, and just tell each other your deep, dark, guilty secret that you're ashamed about. Fancy doing that? Are you sure? Okay, I can understand that. How about you just whisper it to the person next to you? No one's saying no? No, okay then, okay. Well, this is an interesting word. Hopefully I'll get the right button. Glossophobia. Okay, this is a new word for me. And I actually like the way it's described up there, because I'm really liking this idea of tongue fear or tongue dread. We often sort of think about this as the fear of public speaking, but actually I prefer to think of it as the fear of speaking in public. Okay? Who hasn't experienced that intense anxiety, made excuses not to go to things, or felt the waves of wobbles wash over them? Those who are looking closely can see I'm having a bit of a wobble now. Who's experienced anxiety about speaking in public? Hands up. Or lots of times, both hands. So, I did, and actually anxiety, particularly really, really, really severe social anxiety, was a big factor in my alcoholism. And as it says there, it is something that affects 3 out of 4 people. So we're talking quite a big number here. On to the next slide. In fact, surveys have shown that people would most rather die than talk in front of a live audience, which I think is quite, I know that feeling. And I just put up there, I just thought for your interest really, here's a list of the sort of global top 10 fears. So this is a fear that cuts across culture, age, whatever way you look at, whatever category you want to cut it by. We're all flipping scared of standing up here or even sitting down there sometimes. And I thought, well, even if you get nothing else out of today, you'll be able to impress your friends with your knowledge of phobias there. But, okay, this is all very interesting, but what's actually got to do with being a recovery champion? Well, as I said there, we know that tongue fear, as I'm now going to call it, affects basically a hell of a lot of people. And as the slide says, it would seem pretty obvious that treatment and recovery, which is based around communicating with others, would present a bit of a challenge. I find it actually very interesting that very little research has been done on this, and I admit I'm left wondering why. But I put this slide up, I'm not going to read through it because I'm sure you can get the gist of it. But, ultimately, shyness is a major factor. And this is just shyness, not even when you ratchet it up to social anxiety, is a major factor in preventing people from accessing treatment, or even if they are in treatment, for doing some of the things that you think are really, really good for them. And what I'm saying is, to be, as recovery champions, you do need to be very, very aware of this, and that just saying to someone, go to a group or something like that, might seem like a fantastic idea, and they won't turn up. And the reason is not because they're being awkward, it's because they're scared to death. I've seen grown men quake at the thought of going into any kind of group. And in fact, really, this is only one of many, many barriers that people face in getting engaged. So here's my favourite slide. I really enjoyed doing this one. In fact, if you think about it, there are many, many huge barriers that people have to overcome. From the practical, simply having the bus fares. When I first got seriously, I lost my job, I lost my house, I lost everything, and I was on benefits. A bus fare for a day was £3.50. That was a significant amount of my income for that week, and I would have to pay that if ever I wanted to access anything. So, that's a barrier. Having work or family commitments that make attending things difficult. There's physical barriers, people have disabilities, and also simple things like shame about your appearance. I mean, a lot of people get really freaked out about their teeth and how they look, and to go into a group setting can be really, really difficult. There are geographical barriers, living in a place where there's no recovery activity, or the recovery activity doesn't fit your needs. A particular example of this was a girl in East Fife. The only mutual aid group near her was AA. She needed NA. That AA group was full of older men. She was a younger woman. So, that's an issue to take into account. To the emotional, not just the social anxiety, but fear, shame, embarrassment. There are also cultural barriers. Quite recently, we've had people on the site who from ethnic backgrounds that mean they could never really feel that they were able to come out to their community, that they have a drug or an alcohol problem, and won't feel able to attend groups in their area because if anyone saw them, it would be reported back to their community. This in particular was an Asian woman. And to the behavioural, some people are still using and drinking and just don't feel that they can actually go and access things. That gets in the way. Even though, the desire to stop drinking is part of the fellowships and all this kind of stuff, it still can act as a barrier. And I think quite key as well, if you're a person affected by the addiction of others, if you're a family member, it can be very, very hard to find support. I went to Al-Anon's 60th anniversary on Tuesday. I'm not part of the fellowship, but I went for that. And, it's still difficult to get family members to be aware that there actually is that kind of help out there for them. And if you're not a part of the 12-step philosophy, it can be even harder. So I think we've got the picture, haven't we? There's a lot getting in the way of getting people where they need to be. So, but we have this kind of dilemma, because I kind of disagree with some of the stuff about not connected. I think community is vital to recovery. And I think that comes down for me that I can't, that we can. Okay? And we're coming to understand that, I think, more and more as a recovery movement, that in order to get well, we need to connect. We need to move away from a position of isolation to one of engagement. Okay? Because we catch recovery from others. As Mark Gilman said, and I think was sort of mentioned earlier by Mark Johnson, it's often the same people who got you into gear or boozing or whatever it is that actually get you into recovery. But that only happens when we have some sort of contact with those people. And if we're not seeing those people in treatment services and you're not seeing those people, how are you going to catch that recovery bug? I think mutual aid and recovery communities sustain recovery, okay? And that's not just about people new to this game, but for people whose recovery is long-term. And I would count myself getting towards the 5-year mark, but I still count myself as in recovery. Because recovery, for me, is a lot more than not drinking and using. One thing I wanted to say is a note of caution here for recovery champions, actually. I think it's important to point out that if you are taking on this role of nurturing and sustaining others, you must nurture and sustain your own recovery. That is much more important than anything that you can do for anybody else. This is what often gets forgotten in the mix, and I have seen people crash and burn. Frankly, you're no good to anybody if you don't model the behaviour that you expect to see in others. And mutual aid and recovery communities provide knowledge based on shared experience. So, yes, this is what people are actually experiencing. This is how they've overcome it. It might not be the right way, it might be the wrong way, but it's their way and it's one way. So if you're a treatment professional or recovery ally or someone in recovery and don't have a blimmin' good knowledge of all the different kinds of mutual aid, including natural recovery, which I see also as a way of recovering but using different tools, I'm sorry, that's a basic part of your job description. So you need to be educating yourself about all the different pathways that people are using to get well. I sound like a real nag then, don't I? We will do this. Okay. And finally, recovery communities revitalise real communities. This whole thing is not just about getting people off substances, those things. It's about engaging people in their communities. So all through this thread is the fact that there are a vast range of barriers to getting connected, but we know that people need to be connected in order to recover. And I hope you'll think about those issues when you carry out your roles, if nothing else, that you'll start thinking, why isn't that person doing this? What is making it difficult for this person to engage? As with everything, there's no one solution, and I don't want to stand up here and say I have the way. I'd love to, but I haven't. But I can stand here and say that I do have a useful tool for your toolbox, and that is Wired into Recovery. I don't want to come across as doing some selling job on you, but I do feel it's important that you know about it and use it if it suits you as a recovery champion, or if it suits the people you're working with or the families of people you're working with. And I can honestly stand here hand on heart and say that because of my own and others' lived experience of using it as a resource. How many people know about Wired In here? Hey, we're getting better. Cool. Well, just I'm sorry to bore those who already know, but just a few bits and facts for people who may not be aware of it. Okay, I won't go into masses of detail because, to be honest, everything that you want is there on the site for you to digest. It's in your own time, have a look. But just it's actually basically a community of 2,800 people, I said, but actually it's growing, so it's now 2,900. And we, because I'm part of the community, we're people at all stages of our addiction and recovery careers. We're professionals and non-professionals. We're people in addiction and those affected by the addiction of others. We've all got to the stages that we're at by a whole different range of pathways. I myself fall proudly into the pick and mix category because I'm a bit shameless. I pick bits of approaches that really resonate with me. So I got a bit of Buddhism in there, a few bits of the fellowships, a bit of smart recovery, a bit of natural, all those kind of things. But I think that's a real strength to be able to dip in and experience the approaches of others. So as I said, I am actually not part of the fellowships, but I've learned a lot from people who are in the fellowships. If you want to be you on Wired In, you can be. I'm me, mostly, most of the time. But if some of the barriers mentioned previously mean that you don't want to be you don't have to reveal yourself. You can come on as an alias. One of the things I know people are already thinking, well, people can't read and write, and therefore they can't access a blog-based website. In response to that, I have several things to say. One, if people can text, they have the tools to begin to blog. I am getting more and more adept at translating text language. I actually now realise LOL doesn't mean lots of love. I thought, seriously, Fred, I thought, oh God, everyone loves me. Also, if people can't read or write, then that's your responsibility, I think, to be doing something about it, to be honest, and not just for them to be able to access Wired In. And I'm very, very, for myself, I'm very aware that the digital divide is something that we all need to be aware of. If people are excluded from engaging in technology, then that's yet another barrier to overcome. Think about how much you use the internet in your daily life, and then think about someone who's never had that experience. And I really do think that's the responsibility of recovery champions, because technology is there. And I've yet to see a service that doesn't have computers. And if they're lying idle and they're not being used to the max, then I think it's your responsibility to do something about it. Again, nagging. So why get Wired Into Recovery? It's an environment where people can learn and support each other. I learn something every single day, and it makes my understanding of recovery 1,000,000 times richer. Even those that feel they have nothing to offer have their own experience that they can use to offer support. One of my feelings about recovery, and I think is shared by many in the recovery community, you have to give it away to keep it. But this is a way of doing it sometimes without putting people in stressful situations. So people who otherwise couldn't share in a group setting have the opportunity to share their experiences online. Recovery champions themselves need support. This is a fantastic way of you connecting with other recovery champions and seeing what they're doing in other parts of the country. It's a good way to get a feel for other pathways. And to go back to tongue fear, Widen is an alternative way to connect. Crippling social anxiety was a massive part of my alcoholism, and I can't believe I'm standing up here today because it took me very, very close to the end. And this didn't go away by magic when I got sober. And Widen did provide for me a way of meeting people when I couldn't get outside the front door. And I can honestly say, hand on heart, that where I am today is a result of making those initial connections. And most importantly, Widen is a bridge. Although Widen is a virtual community, we see it as intimately connected to the real world. It's not about either ors, it's about recognising that many of us do not easily go from isolation to connection by plonking us in a group. And that many of us, addicts and non-addicts, are actually flipping scared of opening up to others. So any tool that helps people to begin that process, I think, is useful. I'll leave you with a real example. Okay, this is a guy called Biffa who came onto the site. Shout when you've finished reading. Charlotte and Alice were his partner and her stepdaughter. Am I okay to move on? Okay. At the close of this blog, he indicated that he was considering committing suicide. We were able to pick that up and ring a recovery champion, funnily enough, based in Sheffield. Some of you might have heard of him. It's called Carl Cundall. We managed to get in touch. Okay. Last one. He didn't get in touch for a while, but I just thought it was a nice ending. And a bit of a mention for smart recovery training because he enrolled on that. So that's just to show you that actually this is a tool, and I hope to be able to put somebody who potentially came on in real distress in touch with one of you. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.